All right, I think we'll have a few additional people join us as we get started, but we'll want to start on time. Again, good morning and thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Tara Beebe and I head the customer experience team here at Idelic. And with us here today is Phil Baker. He is the product owner of Idelic Safety Suite, and really, you may have read, we refer to him as the godfather of our professional development plans. And one of the things that we are kicking off as all of the kiddos come out of school is a different way to provide some education to fleet leaders and those who are using Idelic Safety Suite or interested in it. So you will see over the course of the next several months, we'll be running lots of these lightning talks. These will be very, very short. They will be very specific on something particular that we believe can have a positive impact on fleet safety programs. And this is really your opportunity. We're going to share a little bit of information, bring a subject matter expert to the table, but we really want this to be an opportunity for you to get questions answered and also, ask things of your peers. So with that, Phil, I will turn it over to you and thank you.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. And I guess good afternoon, because we have one person in New Brunswick who could clearly be different time zone. I'm Phil Baker, Senior Product Manager at Idelic. I have responsibility, as Tara said, for creating those professional development plans. It helps fleets to identify risk, mitigate that with some driver interventions. Those driver interventions really heavily involve coaching techniques and are supported with our Safety Suite software. I've worked in the commercial fleet space for over 20 years. In addition to that, I was a full-time swimming coach prior to prior to being a product manager in the early part of my career. And there I was fortunate enough to be able to work with athletes ranging from young swimmers new to the sport all the way up to Olympic swimmers and world record holders. So this would have been back in the 80s. So probably if you've never heard of these particular swimmers, quite a while ago. But it was the early part of my career, and it was pretty formative in everything that I do. So Tara, we'll go to the agenda slide. So a bunch of stuff to cover today. I'm not going to go through this in any particular detail right now, but you'll see it as it comes up. We want to cover a lot of different areas and really kind of talk through what coaching is all about, how it differs from training, and give you a few tips. And we'll talk a little bit at the end about professional development plans. Move to the next slide. All right, so I just wanted to start with this particular slide with some high-level definition here. But here's the key thing. Coaching and training, they are different, but I will acknowledge they very often happen together. A good program should have a healthy dose of both, in my opinion. They're both important and they're both critical for the development of athletes, or in this particular case, professional drivers. So let's go ahead and slide to the next slide. And Tara, it might come up blank, so I think you got to hit that button again. Here's a question. Who do you think of when you think of a coaching professional? You might think of people like Dusty Baker and Tommy Lasorda on the right there, baseball legends, or you might think of a coach you had in high school. Sports is probably your primary paradigm when you're thinking about coaching, but it really does happen in other disciplines as well, whether we're talking about music or business or public speaking. But for purposes of today's talk, we really want to apply it to the trucking industry. So now the interactive part of the presentation here, a quick and easy exercise, can go into the chat. Everybody enter in a coach that you admire. It might be a coach you've had that coached you in a particular sport. It might be a professional sports team, college coach. Let's all go ahead and enter in some coaches that you've admired in your lifetime. While you're doing that, I'll tell a funny story about baseball coaches. It always struck me as odd that they would wear the same uniform as the players. Like, try to picture Tommy Lasorda running out in the field and playing shortstop, but I was always glad that swim coaches didn't do the same, because nobody wanted to watch me walking around the pool deck in a Speedo and goggles. So all right, so we're getting a few answers in here. So hopefully people are thinking about who they think of when they think of a good coach, and maybe even why they were somebody that you admire. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And yeah. Okay, so here's my first point that I want to make. Driving a truck is not an office job. I know that is glaringly obvious to all of you, but it's kind of important to this particular presentation, right? It's important to acknowledge the physical skills that are required to drive a truck, the constant attention and mental acuity that's required. It's not the same thing as a desk job, right? If I, sitting at my desk, lose my attention for a minute, nobody suffers, there's no problem, but a truck driver can't do that. They have to have constant attention to the road. And that's why I really think like that this is more akin to athletics than it is to business. There are many studies out there that compare the value or the effectiveness of coaching versus training. I happen to pick one here. This was a study from the Frontiers of Psychology where they looked at individual coaching, group coaching, self-coaching, and a control group that just got some training and looked for effectiveness in several different areas. The two most important ones that I pulled out for this particular presentation were around goal attainment and satisfaction. And the long and short of it was they found that individual coaching was the most effective for goal attainment. And it was also had the highest scores in terms of satisfaction. I would argue not just of the person being coached, but also of the coachee or the coach. It's much more satisfying than to just play a video. One of the things I want to talk about is the experience here. So let's imagine for a second a scenario where in a sporting program, there isn't any coaching, right? There's just training, right? So imagine a swimmer that's never been coached, asked to watch a video on backstroke technique and then jump in the pool and swim a race, right? And let's see how you do. Or a baseball team attends a class on physics of hitting a ball without any practice or any feedback before the game and then step up to the plate. How do you imagine that experience is going to be? In both those scenarios, the athlete's going to be strictly relying on what they saw and heard in that training session. They wouldn't get any of the constant monitoring feedback that a good coach can provide. Missing would be the opportunity to be observed and shown ways to improve, direct feedback. They wouldn't hear from multiple voices, as is often the case with the coaching staff. So there's a lot missing from that experience that coaching brings to the table. Okay, we'll go to the next one. All right, so just this is kind of meat and potatoes, some differences between training and coaching. So I'm just going to kind of go through these, and then we have
Phil, we lost your sound. Oh, Phil? Hold on just a minute here. Looks like Phil might be dialing back in. Give us just a second.
Hi,
Oh,
I'm back.
You're back. Yeah, we
I
got
don't know how that happened. It just all of a sudden went blank. So I guess I'll get started right back into it. All right, so training really focused on organizational goals. And an example of that might be, you're meeting with your entire team and you have a conversation with them about, hey, we want to reduce violation overall from this terminal in 2023 by 20%. There's some general areas we want to see reduced, including speeding, traffic signage violations, but it's a goal for the entire group. And by the way, I sat up by the stop sign yesterday and every single one of you rolled through the stop sign. So we've got to work on that. Coaching would be more specific to the particular individual that you're coaching. So a conversation might center on how many telematics events that particular driving. You're getting about 35 to 40 telematics events every month. So next month, let's try to reduce that to less than 20, and we're really going to focus on speeding and harsh braking events because that's where you have some issues. So that's really more of a focus on the individual on the coaching side of the slide. On the training side, it's generally training is the same for all participants. So training might include an online webinar, such as this one, right? Or it might include, sorry, I'm jumping around here on my notes. It might include classroom training or in-person class, whereas coaching is really going to be unique. So it's really all about finding out where that individual is, what they're struggling with, establishing some goals for them, and helping them to achieve that particular goal. On the training side of the house, it's really about knowledge transfer. So training really wants to ensure that driver methods are conveyed and understood. Coaching is really about ensuring that the safe driving methods are adopted by the driver. So a little bit different in terms of the goal and what they're trying to accomplish. With training, we're really assuming everybody's at the same point or the same-ish point. Now, I'll use again this webinar as an example, but onboarding new drivers, right? They're all kind of coming in at the same time, and it's much more efficient to train them all together. Or new regulation review might be another example of that. With coaching, again, you want to find out where the driver is. You might want to look at their watch list scores or some other scorecard ranking, look at the behavior patterns, and you're going to craft with them a plan for development and where they need to be. And then last but not least, training is really designed to build knowledge and skills, whereas coaching is really designed to increase self-awareness about attitude, behavior, decisions, and development. And yes, that was the intro slide with the definition of coaching versus training. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Sorry. Okay. So, little word about this. So what I see a lot as I go out there and I look at what people are using to help improve safety and mitigate risk with their drivers, I see a lot of what I would call automated video training. I made that up, that's not an industry term, but really the concept of you can just click a button, send a video to a driver, and you're done. That has its place, right? There's a value in there, but there's some things missing from that that are really, really important. So things like, the driver knows their behavior's been noticed, but sending an email and telling them to watch short video is really not going to have the same impact of a coaching session. It's missing interactive discussion. So even if the email and the video are jammed with information, the likelihood of it being understood and absorbed are a lot less than if you have a conversation with the driver, maybe guided by some well-crafted talking points to keep everybody on track. And we're going to mention that again later in the presentation. The sending of a video link for email is really missing out on multiple contact points with the driver, right? That's something you can do with coaching programs. You can check in repeatedly and see what kind of progress that particular driver is making in their occupation. Then last but not least, and I think this is really the most important one, especially in this industry where we have high turnover and retention is so important. By just sending a video, what's really missed there is an opportunity to connect with that driver. So it's really kind of impersonal and automated, whereas coaching sessions are really an opportunity to show the value the driver has to the company, right? That human touch. And that I think is really, really important. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Okay, so then why do training at all? Why is that so important? So can you go to the next slide, Tara? Sorry. So training is useful, right? And there's a lot of scenarios or situations where you really want to be using training. So an example might be where there's some common information, and maybe it's a new ELD that your company's adopting. None of the drivers have used it before. So you really want to do training sessions to walk everybody through that common information that needs to be shared. Points number 2 and 3 on here. I coached teams for a lot of years, and one of my favorite parts of coaching was watching those group dynamics develop, seeing leaders emerge from the group. It's really kind of a fun part of sports coaching. And, that's something that often comes out of group training sessions where you're able to kind of see those leaders emerge. A little bit of a side note here, the best drivers may or may not be the best leaders. One of the things I discovered in my coaching was very often leaders in the group were not the best swimmers. They were the swimmers that worked the hardest, that had a true interest in seeing the full team improve and get better. So you may see that in your organizations as well. Another place that training is useful is with foundational information, right? So information that's new to everybody. I kind of touched on that with the example of a new ALD, but another example might be new regulations that are coming out. It's the same for everybody. Nobody's seen it before. You've got to go over it, all of it with everybody together. And then last, but certainly not least, is video training. So video training can be incorporated into good coaching programs as long as it's a part of a larger coaching plan and it's really pertinent to that driver situation. But just throwing a random video at a driver, I don't think is as effective as using it as a part of that larger coaching plan. Okay. All right, let's go to the next slide. All right, so a few tips here. So always remember, coaching is about the driver. It's not about you in a previous role. It's not about some other driver on your fleet. Examples are always good. I encourage examples to be used, especially, but they really got to be demonstrating something useful to the development of the driver. That's kind of critical that it's always on task and on target for what you're trying to get accomplished with that particular driver. Carrot and stick, not too much carrot or stick. Rewards and penalties are going to be a part of just about any coaching program that's out there. But I strongly encourage you, don't serve out too many carrots and don't go to the stick too soon. So here's the thing is you're both professionals. Both you and the driver are professionals, and that driver should want to improve as much as you want them to, right? It shouldn't require constant incentives or constant threat of penalty to get them to improve. So that's where the conversation comes in so they can really understand where they want to go as a driver. Your job is really just to create that environment where the driver can succeed in achieving their goals. Your job as a coach is to talk to the driver and, more importantly, listen to the driver. Listening is going to tell you a lot about how to work with them. And I've heard this story from multiple fleet managers out there. Maybe they're having a rough time at home or they're being distracted by something unrelated to driving. The human thing to do is ask, acknowledge it, account for it in your coaching if you can, but not to overlook it, right? It could be an important part of their overall development to understand what their particular situation is. Next one, stories. So stories are fun to tell. I love telling stories about my former coaching experiences. If we're ever at a conference or something, ask me and buy me a beer and I'll tell you a bunch of stories. But remember that you're coaching to ultimately keep the driver and others safe. That's the whole point of this. So tell a story, but tell it when it helps to convey a point or stimulates the driver to maybe think about something differently than they are today. Ask a lot of questions, right? That's critical to coaching. Try to deeply understand that driver's experience, perspectives, etc. Before, I'm going to use air quotes here, passing any judgment or issuing advice. It's really important for you to try to understand the driver's scenario, because that's going to help in that interactive back and forth and in the recommendations you can make to them in terms of what they can do to improve. Next one I love. In today's world of tech, especially in the trucking industry, you have all kinds of tools at your disposal. So use whatever works for you, right? So whether that is in external and in-cab video, whether it is reviewing the driver's FMCSA record, being aware of their telematics camera events. You can look at specific events, more importantly, look at trends over time. What does their accident history look like? There's a lot out there for you to draw on that you can use in the coaching sessions with the driver to help them set goals and achieve those goals. Last, and I would say last, definite at least, but this one I think is important. Be prepared, have a plan, right? So going into coaching sessions with drivers, you're taking them out from behind the wheel, so they're not on the road, they're not accruing miles. So you should have everything you need when you're meeting, whether that's a video of them driving that you need to show to them so they can see what you see, or an ELD manual so you can show them how the particular ELD works, or a printout of your key talking points. Be ready for that meeting. That time's valuable. It's your time and it's their time. It's very, very valuable. So don't waste it. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about coaching plans and what those could look like. So one of the things that I think you should always be looking for in terms of setting an overall plan is a pre-formatted plan template that covers a wide range of behaviors that drivers might need coaching on, such as speeding, following distance, distracted driving, etc. That's going to add a ton of efficiency to what you're doing, and yet give you the flexibility to make it specific to a driver and their needs. A plan with talking points about specific subjects is going to help keep your coaches on message, right? So if they've got 10 talking points that they need to cover in this particular session, they shouldn't just be reading those points off. They're going to just basically use that to kind of frame and guide the discussion as they go along. I always worked as a member of coaching staff, and it was important that athletes heard consistent messaging from all the coaches. So we worked as a coaching staff, we worked together, but it was important very often for athletes to be able to hear it from multiple people. And I think that should be a part of a coaching program, multiple voices that drivers can hear from. You want a system where you can manage all these tasks. There's a lot to this, and all those moving parts. So you want a system that's going to help you manage and monitor effectiveness of the program, and so you can watch how things are going. Not on the slide, little bonus here. You want a system where individual progress can be measured and seen and then shared with the driver, right? That's critical. And then finally, a playbook. So, at Idelic, we offer the playbook and the software and everything that you see on the slide, but very often it's important that that's just a starting point for the fleet, right? They really need to be able to customize it to their business. Each business has their own set of principles and guidelines that they want to apply to their safety coaching program. But a playbook is going to help you lay all that out and make sense of it all. So I think that's a critical point. So last slide, we've got a link to a blog post on the Idelic website that you're free to go take a look at. And I think we'll have more coming soon on that. So that's my topic for today, and hopefully people got something out of it. So Tara, do we have any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. So this is a great opportunity to ask questions. I know we just touched kind of briefly on the professional development plans that are available in Idelic Safety Suite. There's a couple different questions, Phil, that have come in. I'd love to have you kind of ask. One question here. I'm already using our own professional development plans at my fleet. What's the difference between the ones that I'm using versus what's in Safety Suite? Can I put mine in there?
Yeah, absolutely. So the professional development plans that we offer pre-formatted, pre-written professional development plans with all the talking points. But there's a structure in there where, and frankly, most of our fleets enter in their own professional development plans with their own talking points that are unique to their customers. Then we have the fleets that sit in between that. They use our professional development plans as a starting point, but they do some customization to it to match their business and where they're going. So we've got a wide range of options available with our professional development plans where you can use what you need.
Okay. Thanks. Another question, also related to professional development plans. How do professional development plans sound very, very serious, more disciplinary? How do you get drivers on board with participating with a professional development plan and not feeling like they're in trouble?
Yeah, and I think that, yeah, that's a great question. So I think a lot of it is that human nature of coaching versus training. You're not just throwing something at them saying, hey, we had an event happen, it wasn't good, take this class and then get back on the road, right? That interaction, that dialogue about we want you to be the best possible professional driver you can be. And this is one of the things that I've talked to a lot of fleet managers about, is to approach this as, look, I'm here like a professional coach would be for a football player or a hockey player or any other athlete would be. My job is to kind of reflect back to you what I'm seeing, so that you can help yourself to get better, right? And I think if it's approached that way, it's more of a collaborative experience between the driver and the coach. It's going to be much better received.
Okay. And then one final question, and just a note, if anyone has other questions, you can use that QA box or feel free to use the chat. If you have specific questions about professional development plans or anything else that Phil has covered, we have just a couple more. But one final question, if we're not using professional development plans currently, how do we make the transition to using them?
Yeah, so that's part of what the playbook that we put out there is all about, is how to make that transition from not having that plan to having it. So there's a lot of steps laid out within that playbook about the repetitive tasks. A lot of the talking points from this particular session are included in that playbook, but it kind of lays out a pathway to get to a overall coaching program for your drivers. Again, either using the professional development plans that we've written or your own professional development plans. And by the way, we also have fleets that use both. So they might use ours as a starting point and then add some on from there. Reach out to your account manager. They can help you get that set up and running, and make sure that all your managers / coaches are in our system and receiving notifications and understand what their tasks are. So.
Okay, and just we have one more minute, one other question. How big do you need to be? Does the size of your fleet or the size of your safety team matter to successfully use professional development plans?
I really don't think it does, but one of the things that we see is some of the larger fleets have multiple full-time safety managers. They have their own plans, and they're able to kind of use ours in a very customized manner for their particular fleet. What we see with some of the smaller fleets is they start out by just adopting our plans, right? It's a lot faster, easier. They don't have to write them, and they can just jump on board with them right away. So we have fleets as small as, I don't want to say 50 to 60 drivers that are using our professional development plans to mitigate risk and reduce accidents.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. I don't see any other questions. Going once, going twice. And Phil, I want to thank you very much for hosting today and sharing this detail with the group. Just so everyone knows, you will receive a link to the recording. We'll also go ahead and provide the link to this blog. And as Phil mentioned, if you have any questions, need one-on-one follow-up conversation, if you are already using Idelic Safety Suite, then certainly your customer success manager can engage, answer additional questions. If not, you'll have my contact information and Phil's contact information, and we're happy to do a further deep dive with you. So thank you very much. Have a great rest of your week.